My son and my daughter-in-law were walking cheerfully toward the title company's office. Today, I was supposed to sign the deed of gift, transferring my apartment over to them. They were carrying folders, documents, and rehearsed smiles. Lucas was wearing his best suit, and Harper was wearing that wine-colored dress she liked to show off whenever she thought she had won something important. When they arrived at the correct address, my son was dumbfounded. "Babe, this is a police precinct, not a lawyer's office," I heard him say, his voice cracking with confusion. My mother tricked us. At that instant, Harper's cell phone began to vibrate. Once, twice, 5 times in a row. She pulled it out of her designer bag with trembling hands, and when she read the screen, her face lost all its color. Lucas snatched the phone from her, and his eyes went wide as saucers. He brought his hand to his chest, as if his heart were about to explode. "Babe, we have $850,000 in debt," he whispered in a choked voice. "What the hell did you do?" Another message lit up the screen. Then another, and another one. The phone would not stop vibrating. Harper began to hyperventilate. Lucas was screaming in the middle of the street, demanding explanations that she could not give him because the words were drowning in her throat. And I watched them from the window of the coffee shop across the street, with my neighbor Frank by my side, feeling the tears rolling down my wrinkled cheeks. "This is justice, Eleanor," Frank told me, squeezing my hand gently. "They were planning to destroy you, but it still hurt. Because that desperate man now trembling in front of the precinct was my son, the baby I nursed, the boy I fed even when I was starving, the young man for whom I sacrificed my entire life to give a future. And now, he had planned to steal everything from me, to leave me on the street, to abandon me as if I were trash. But how did we get here? How did a mother who gave everything end up being betrayed by her own blood? Let me tell you my story from the beginning, because to understand this revenge, you first need to know the scars I carry in my soul. I was born 72 years ago in a forgotten town in rural Appalachia, where being a woman meant being someone else's property. My mother died when I was 9 years old. I remember her body consumed by an illness we never identified, because going to the doctor cost money we did not have. Her last words were for me: "Eleanor, take care of your brothers. Be strong. Don't cry. Survive." But I cried. I cried until my grandmother hit me with a leather belt and told me that tears were for the weak, that I had to turn into stone if I wanted to see another sunrise in this cruel world. I was 9 years old, and I was already learning that love was a luxury the poor could not afford. My father remarried 6 months later. His new wife saw me and my 3 brothers as useless mouths to feed. She gave us the leftovers after she and my father had eaten their fill. She forced us to work from before dawn until night fell, and you could not even see your hand in front of your face. I scrubbed other people's laundry in a tin tub until my hands cracked and bled. I was 11 years old, and my hands looked like those of an old woman. I scrubbed floors in other people's houses, carried sacks of corn that weighed more than I did, gathered firewood in the woods dodging snakes and thorns, all for a plate of watery beans and a piece of stale cornbread. I remember one night my younger brother, barely 7 years old, cried from hunger because there was nothing to eat. My stepmother hit him for making noise and locked him in the chicken coop. I went in with him, and we spent the night hugging each other among the chickens, shivering from cold and fear. At 16, a man named Arthur, 20 years older than me, came to speak with my father. I saw him arrive in his old pickup truck with his worn-out hat and his muddy boots. They spoke in low voices for an hour. No one asked me what I wanted. No one asked me if I loved him or if I even knew him. My father simply walked into the house and said, "You have a husband now. Pack your things. You leave tomorrow at dawn." That night, I cried on my cot while I packed my 3 mended dresses and the shawl that had belonged to my mother. My younger sister, 13 years old, hugged me and said, "At least you'll escape from here, Eleanor. Maybe he'll be good to you. Maybe I would get lucky." But luck was never something that accompanied me. Arthur was neither good nor bad. He was a simple man who worked in the fields from sunup to sundown and expected me to give him children, cook for him, wash his clothes, and never contradict him. And that is what I did for 24 years. I became a shadow, a servant, a womb that was supposed to bear fruit. At 17, I had Lucas. The birth was at home, without a doctor, just with a midwife who smelled of rubbing alcohol and yelled at me to push harder. I thought I was going to die. The pain was so intense I begged God to take me. But when I heard his cry, when I held him for the first time with his wrinkled little face and his tiny fists, something inside me changed forever. I swore in that moment that he would have a different life, that he would go to college, that he would never go hungry like I did, that he would never feel the bitter taste of humiliation that I had swallowed all my life, that he would be someone important, that he would make me proud. Arthur died when I was 40. A stupid accident during the harvest. The tractor tipped over and crushed him against the earth he had worked so hard. I could not even see him one last time, because when I arrived at the hospital, running and barefoot, they had already covered him with a white sheet stained with dry blood. Overnight I was a widow, without money, without a home of my own, with a 23-year-old son who was finishing college thanks to a scholarship I had secured by begging on my knees to a local politician who looked at me with pity and finally signed the papers. Those were the years of true hell. I worked cleaning offices at night, from 8 in the evening to 6 in the morning, 12 hours straight scrubbing floors and bathrooms for peanuts. During the day, I sold food at a stand I set up on a corner near the market. I made burgers, fries, sandwiches. I spent hours standing under the sun that burned your skin until it looked like old leather, or under the rain that soaked your bones and made you shiver with cold. My feet swelled so much that at night I could not even take off my shoes. I ate once a day so Lucas could eat 3 times. I wore the same mended clothes for 5 years so he could have decent outfits for the university. I walked 2 hours to save the bus fare. That money was for Lucas's books, for his copies, for his projects. I denied myself medical treatment to pay for everything he needed. Once I had a urinary infection so severe I was peeing blood and had a fever that made me delirious. But I did not go to the doctor because that month we had to pay the registration for Lucas's next semester. I cured myself with herbal teas a neighbor gave me, and with the sheer will not to die. I remember one Christmas when Lucas was 25 and I had just turned 48. I did not have a single dollar, literally nothing. I had spent every last penny on a book Lucas needed for his thesis. That night I sat in our miserable room and had salt water for dinner while I waited for him to arrive from his part-time job at a gas station. When Lucas walked in with a bag of food from the market, a rotisserie chicken and warm rolls, he broke down. He hugged me, crying like when he was a child. "Mom, you gave me everything. You sacrificed your entire life for me. You sold your health, your youth, your happiness, so I could study. Now I am going to take care of you forever. I swear to you by God and by my father's memory. You will never lack for anything. You will live like a queen." I cried on his shoulder, feeling that finally, after so many years of pain and sacrifice, everything had been worth it. That all that suffering had served a great purpose. To raise a good man, a grateful son. How naive I was. How stupidly naive and blind. Lucas graduated with honors. He got a good job at a logistics company. He started earning well. He helped me with money every month, and I was finally able to leave the food stand. I kept cleaning offices, but at least I did not have to kill myself working so hard. At 55, I started to save. Every dollar that was left over, I kept in a tin hidden under my bed. I dreamed of having something of my own, a place where no one could kick me out, where I could lock the door and feel safe for the first time in my life. It took me 10 years. 10 years saving every penny, denying myself any pleasure, living with the minimum. Lucas helped me with part of the down payment. I remember he cried when I told him I was finally going to buy my condo. "Mom, you deserve it more than anyone in this world," he told me. At 65, after working until my knees barely supported me and my back was a permanent knot of pain, I managed to buy it. A small 2-bedroom apartment in a modest building on the west side of the city. It was not luxurious. The walls had cracks, the floors were worn, the furniture was second-hand. But it was mine, completely mine. The day I signed the deed at the title company, I cried so much the agent asked if I felt okay. "I am better than okay," I told her. "For the first time in my life, I have a place in the world that no one can take from me." Oh, that is what I believed, like the fool I have always been. Lucas was already married to Harper by then. They had met 2 years prior at his job. She was an administrative assistant in the Human Resources Department. The first time I saw her, she seemed beautiful. Long, shiny hair, nails always perfect, elegant clothes. She smiled a lot and spoke with a soft and polite voice. At first, I loved her. "Eleanor, you look so pretty today," she would tell me every time she saw me, even though I knew she was lying. "Eleanor, no one cooks like you. This pot roast is delicious. Eleanor, you are the best mother-in-law in the world. I wish my mother were like you." But there was something in her eyes that unsettled me. A coldness hidden behind that perfect smile of pearly white teeth. A calculated way of touching my things when she came to visit, as if she were appraising their value. She would grab my plates, my ornaments, my photos, and ask, "Is this real silver, Eleanor? And this, how much did it cost you?" The first 2 years of marriage were quiet. They lived in a rented apartment downtown. Lucas was still at his good job, earning well, and Harper worked too. They came to visit me on Sundays. I cooked for them roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans. We ate together. We laughed. We seemed like a normal, happy family. But then the strange comments began. Subtle at first. "Eleanor, this apartment is too big for you alone. Doesn't it scare you to be here? Eleanor, at your age, you should think about your safety. The stairs are very steep. Eleanor, I read in the paper that seniors suffer fatal falls in their homes all the time." I laughed uncomfortably and changed the subject, but the words stayed floating in the air like black crows waiting for carrion. Lucas never said anything. He just nodded while Harper spoke. One Sunday, about 8 months ago, while I was making coffee in the kitchen, I heard Harper talking to Lucas in the living room. Her voice was low, but I had the window open, and the sound carried clear as a church bell. "Lucas, your mom isn't going to live forever. She is 72. That apartment could be ours. It's worth like $200,000. We could sell it and buy something much better in the northern suburbs." I felt as if a rusty knife had been driven into my chest. I stood paralyzed with the coffee pot in my hand, feeling the steam burning my fingers, but unable to move. And the worst part was not what Harper said. The worst part was my son's response. "Don't worry, babe. I'm already working on that. I just need her to trust that it's best for her safety." That night I could not sleep. I lay staring at the cracked ceiling of my bedroom, wondering if I had heard correctly. If my own son, the boy I gave everything to, was really planning to take the only thing I had. Over the next few weeks, I watched everything more carefully, and I started to notice things I had ignored before. Harper going through the drawers in my bedroom when she thought I wasn't looking. Lucas taking photos of my apartment with his cell phone. The two of them whispering and shutting up abruptly when I walked into the room. One day, they arrived with a man they introduced as Kevin, a lawyer friend of Lucas. "Mom, Kevin came to explain something very important to you about protecting your estate," Lucas said, with that fake smile I was starting to recognize. Kevin was a guy of about 40. Cheap suit, used car salesman smile. He sat in my living room and started talking to me as if I were a stupid child. "Mrs. Eleanor, at your age, it is very important to think about the future. Inheritance taxes are extremely high. If you donate your apartment to your son now via a quitclaim deed, you save all that trouble. Plus, you can continue living here peacefully." Something inside me screamed that it was a lie, that there was a trap. But Lucas took my hand and said, "Mom, we just want to protect you. We just want to make sure you're okay." I told them I would think about it. Kevin left some papers on the table. Lucas insisted several times during that afternoon. Harper hugged me goodbye and whispered, "Eleanor, trust us. We are your family." That night I called Frank, my neighbor from the apartment next door. Frank was a 68-year-old man, a widower, a retired police officer who had lived alone since his wife died of cancer 5 years ago. He had always been kind to me. He helped me carry grocery bags, fix things that broke in my apartment. We drank coffee together on Saturday mornings on his balcony. That night I knocked on his door past 10 o'clock. "Eleanor, what happened? Are you okay?" he asked, alarmed when he saw my face. Come in. We sat in his living room, and I told him everything. The conversations I had heard, the fake lawyer, the pressure from Lucas and Harper. Frank listened in silence, with that serious expression he surely wore when he was a cop. When I finished speaking, he sighed deeply. "Eleanor, this smells very bad, very bad." That guy Kevin isn't a legitimate lawyer, I assure you, and this thing about donating your apartment is the oldest scam in the book. Once you sign, they are going to kick you out of here in less than a month. They are going to sell, and you are going to be left on the street. But he is my son, I whispered, feeling the tears beginning to roll down. He is my only son. I sacrificed everything for him. I know, Frank told me, taking my wrinkled hand in his. And that is exactly why this hurts so much. But you need to know the whole truth. Let me investigate a little. Over the next 2 weeks, Frank used his contacts from when he was on the force. He spoke with colleagues, checked public records, asked questions at places where Harper worked. What he discovered destroyed my soul. Harper had debts. A lot of debts. Credit cards maxed out at 5 different banks. Personal loans, payday lenders. It all added up to $850,000. She had spent it on designer clothes, expensive shoes, jewelry, beauty treatments, trips she bragged about on social media. She was a shopaholic living way above her means, and Lucas knew it. He had signed as a co-signer on several of those loans. He was up to his neck in his wife's debts. That is why they needed my apartment. Not to protect me, to save themselves. Frank showed me the documents he had obtained. Account statements, loan contracts, everything. I broke down. I cried like I hadn't cried since I was a child. I cried for all the broken illusions, for all the wasted sacrifices, for having believed that a mother's love was enough to raise a decent son. Frank hugged me while I sobbed. Calm down, Eleanor, calm down. We can still do something. We can still teach them a lesson they will never forget. What can we do? I asked him, wiping my tears with the back of my hand. They are my debts too if Lucas signed as a co-signer. They are going to lose everything anyway. Exactly, Frank said with a strange smile. That is exactly why we are going to use that against them. We are going to make them expose themselves. Make them show their true intentions in front of witnesses. Make sure there is a record of what they plan to do to you. I don't understand, I told him, confused. It's simple, Frank explained. You are going to pretend you accept donating the apartment to them. You are going to act like the naive grandmother they think you are. But instead of taking them to a real title company, you are going to take them straight to the precinct in the district where I have friends. And there, when the collection notices arrive, which I am going to schedule to arrive at that exact moment, they are going to expose themselves. But that doesn't solve my son's debts, I said. Exact, smiled Frank. But it puts them in a position where they have to explain why they were trying to scam a 72-year-old woman. Elder financial abuse, attempted larceny, breach of trust. With the right evidence, Harper can face criminal charges. And believe me, the banks are going to be much more aggressive collecting when they know there is a police investigation involved. I spent that entire night awake thinking about Frank's plan. A part of me, the part that was still a mother, wanted to believe there was some mistake, that Lucas would react in time, that he would choose me over Harper and the money. But the part that had survived 72 years of blows, humiliations, and betrayals knew the truth. My son had already chosen, and he hadn't chosen me. The next day, when Lucas came to visit, I acted my role. Son, I have been thinking a lot about what you and Kevin said. You're right. At my age, it is better to secure things. I don't want you to have problems with taxes when I am no longer here. Lucas's face lit up. Really, Mom? You're really going to do it? Yes, I told him, forcing a smile. But on one condition. I want Harper to be present too. She is your wife. She is part of this family. I want both of you to be there when I sign. Of course, Mom, said Lucas, hugging me with fake emotion. Harper is going to be so happy. We both thank you so much. That afternoon, I heard Lucas talking on the phone on my balcony. Harper, we did it. My mom is going to sign. Yes, next week. As soon as we have the deed, we sell it immediately. I have a contact who can buy it in cash in less than 3 days. With that, we pay off your debts and have enough left to start over. Every word was a dagger in my heart. But I didn't cry anymore. The time for crying was over. Now was the time for justice. Over the next few days, Frank and I prepared everything meticulously. He spoke with his former partners at the East District Precinct. He explained the situation to them. They were more than willing to help. Cops hate people who abuse the elderly. Frank also contacted Harper's creditor banks using information he had obtained. He informed them that there was an ongoing investigation for possible fraud. The banks, smelling blood, prepared legal notifications to send exactly when Frank indicated. I, for my part, acted like the perfect grandmother. I cooked for Lucas and Harper. I welcomed them with smiles. I told them how happy I was to be able to help them. Harper would hug me and say, "Eleanor, you are an angel. You don't know what this means to us." Every fake hug gave me more strength to go ahead with the plan. The agreed day arrived. A Tuesday morning, Lucas picked up Harper early. I saw them from my window when they arrived to pick me up. They came dressed elegantly, Lucas in his gray suit, Harper in that wine-colored dress and sky-high heels. They carried a folder with documents. They smiled as if they had won the lottery. "Good morning, Mom," Lucas said, kissing my forehead. "Ready for the big day?" "Ready," I replied, with a trembling voice that I didn't have to fake. My heart was beating so hard I thought it was going to burst out of my chest. We got into Lucas's car. During the ride, Harper wouldn't stop talking. "Eleanor, after this we are going to celebrate. We are going to take you to lunch at your favorite restaurant. You'll see that everything is going to be fine. You stay living in the apartment peacefully, and we just take care of the paperwork." Liar. Damn liar. When we arrived at the address I had given them, Lucas parked the car. The three of us got out. They walked ahead, confident, victorious. I came behind, my legs shaking, and then Lucas stopped dead in front of the building. He looked at the large sign that said East District Police Precinct. His face went from confusion to panic in 2 seconds. "Babe," he whispered to Harper, "this is a police station, not a law office." Harper looked at the sign and then looked at me with eyes full of confusion. "Eleanor, you got the wrong address. This isn't the notary or title company. Where is the office?" I didn't make a mistake. I told them with a firm voice that surprised even me. "This is exactly the address I wanted to give you." "Mom, what are you saying?" asked Lucas with a trembling voice. "What is this? Why did you bring us to a police station?" At that precise instant, as if the universe itself were on my side, Harper's cell phone began to vibrate. Once, twice, 5 times in a row. The sound was so loud in the silence of the morning that even I could hear it from where I stood. Harper took the phone out of her purse with hands that were visibly shaking. She looked at the screen, and the color left her face completely. Her lips went white. Her eyes opened so wide it looked like they were going to pop out of their sockets. Lucas, alarmed by her reaction, snatched the cell phone from her hands. And when he read what was on the screen, he brought his hand to his chest, exactly as I had imagined he would. His breathing became erratic. His legs began to shake. "Babe," he whispered in a choked voice, "we have $850,000 in debt. $850,000. What the hell did you do?" The phone kept vibrating, message after message, notification after notification. Banks, financial institutions, payday lenders, all collecting at the same time, all threatening immediate legal action. Harper opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her eyes darted frantically from Lucas to me to the precinct building, from the building back to her phone, which wouldn't stop ringing. Lucas began reading the messages out loud, each word more desperate than the last. "National Bank, your debt of $150,000 will be transferred to judicial collection. Southern Finance, preventive seizure of assets authorized. Quick Loan House, your co-signer Lucas Sanchez is liable for the entirety of the debt." "I signed as a co-signer," screamed Lucas, looking at Harper with eyes full of horror. "I signed. You told me it was only $20,000. You told me it was temporary. You promised me you were going to pay." Harper finally found her voice, but it was barely a broken whisper. I was going to pay. When we had your mom's apartment. When we sold it, I was going to pay everything. I swear." "When we had my mom's apartment," repeated Lucas, as if he couldn't believe what he had just heard. "You planned this from the beginning. All of this. The fake lawyer, the donation. It was all to pay your damn debts." People passing by on the street began to stop. A scene like that, in front of a police station, with screaming and desperation, wasn't something seen every day. Some took out their cell phones. Others simply watched with morbid curiosity. I stood there, a few yards away, watching my own son crumble. A part of me, the part that was still a mother, wanted to run to hug him, to tell him everything was going to be okay, that I would fix it like I had always fixed everything in his life. But the other part, the part that had been betrayed, deceived, used, that part stood firm as a rock. At that moment, Frank came out of the precinct accompanied by 2 uniformed officers. One was Sergeant Miller, a man of about 50 with a serious face. The other was a younger officer holding a tablet in his hands. "Good morning," said Sergeant Miller with a professional voice. "Is there a problem here?" Lucas and Harper turned toward them. The expression of panic on their faces was almost comical. Almost, because it didn't make me laugh. It gave me a sadness so deep I felt I was drowning. "Officer, this is a misunderstanding," Lucas began to say with a desperate voice. "My mother called us here, but we thought we were going to a lawyer's office. I don't know what is happening." "Oh, I do know what is happening," I said, taking a step forward. My voice sounded stronger than I expected, more sure. "You planned for me to sign over my apartment, my only asset, the only thing I have after 72 years of sacrifice. You were going to make me sign fake papers with a fake lawyer to keep my property and sell it, all to pay the debts this woman accumulated buying luxuries she couldn't afford." "That isn't true," screamed Harper. "That isn't true. We just wanted to help you, Eleanor. We just wanted to protect you." "Protect me?" I repeated, feeling the rage begin to boil in my chest. "Protect me by leaving me on the street? Protect me by stealing the only thing I have? Protect me after I sacrificed my entire life for that son who it seems you brainwashed?" "Mom, please," pleaded Lucas. "Let me explain. Things aren't how you think." "Oh, I think they are exactly how I think," I told him, "and I have proof." Frank stepped forward and handed Sergeant Miller a thick folder. "Sergeant, everything is here. Audio recordings where Mr. Lucas Sanchez and Mrs. Harper Sanchez discuss their plan to take over Mrs. Eleanor's apartment. Text messages between them, coordinating with a certain Kevin who poses as a lawyer but isn't registered with the Bar Association. Documents showing Mrs. Harper's debts and how Mr. Lucas signed as a co-signer without knowing the real amount, and the complete plan to sell the apartment immediately after the alleged donation. Sergeant Miller opened the folder and began reviewing the documents. His expression became increasingly serious. The young officer took notes on his tablet. "How did you get that?" Harper screamed at me, her face deformed by fury. "That is an invasion of privacy. That is illegal." "What is illegal is elder financial abuse," responded Frank calmly. "What is illegal is trying to strip a senior citizen of her assets through deceit. What is illegal is using fake documents and impersonating certified professionals." Lucas let himself fall against the car. His legs no longer supported him. He brought his hands to his face and began to sob like a child. "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to," Harper convinced me. "She told me it was the only way, that you would be okay, that we could take better care of you. I didn't want to hurt you." "But you were going to do it anyway," I told him, feeling the tears finally beginning to roll down my cheeks. "You were going to sign those papers. You were going to sell my apartment. You were going to leave me with nothing. After everything I did for you, after everything I sacrificed." Sergeant Miller closed the folder. "Mrs. Harper Sanchez, Mr. Lucas Sanchez, you are going to have to accompany us inside to make some statements. There is enough evidence here to open a formal investigation for attempted fraud and elder abuse." "No, no, no," Harper began to scream. "This can't be happening. This can't be happening. Eleanor, please. Tell them it's a misunderstanding. Please. I have 2 small children. I can't have a criminal record. Please." "You don't have children," I told her coldly. "I investigated. You don't have children. That is another one of your lies." Harper fell silent, trapped in her own web of deceit. Lucas looked up at me. His face was swollen from crying so much. "Mom, what is going to happen now? What are we going to do with the debts? The banks are going to take everything from us. We are going to lose the apartment where we live. We are going to lose everything." And for a moment, just for a moment, I felt pity for him, because he was still my son, because I remembered the 5-year-old boy who clung to my skirt when he had nightmares, because I remembered the 20-year-old young man who cried on my shoulder when his father died. But then I remembered the conversations I had heard, the plans they had made, the coldness with which they had decided to destroy my life. You should have thought about that before, I told him. Before planning to steal from me, before betraying me, before forgetting everything I did for you. Sergeant Miller signaled the 2 officers accompanying him. Folks, please accompany us inside. We need to take your formal statements, and there are some documents you must sign. I am not going in there, screamed Harper, backing toward the car. I didn't do anything wrong. We were just trying to secure the family's future. That isn't a crime. Using fake documents and deceiving an elderly person to strip her of her assets is a crime, ma'am, responded the sergeant with a firm but professional tone. And we have enough evidence to proceed. You can cooperate voluntarily, or I can request a warrant. But one way or another, you are going to have to give explanations. Lucas took Harper by the arm. His face had gone from panic to a kind of painful resignation. Harper, enough. We lost. Let's go in and declare. The more we cooperate, the better it will be for us. Better for us? Screamed Harper, breaking loose from his grip. There is nothing better for us. We are ruined. We have $850,000 in debts that now all the banks are going to collect at the same time. They are going to seize everything. We are going to lose the apartment, the cars, everything. And it's all your damn mother's fault and her revenge. Don't you dare! I yelled at her, feeling rage explode inside me like a volcano. Don't you dare blame me for the consequences of your own actions. You created those debts. You spent money you didn't have on whims and luxuries. You convinced my son to rob me. This is your fault and no one else's. Harper looked at me with a hatred so pure it gave me chills. You ruined our lives, you stupid old woman. We could have paid everything. We could have started over. But no, you had to be the victim. You had to stage this whole circus to make yourself the martyr. The martyr? I repeated, feeling something break inside me. I am the martyr? I, who worked until I bled so my son could have an education? I, who denied myself food so he could eat? I, who sacrificed my health, my youth, every second of my life to give him a future? And you, who only think of yourself, of your whims, of your fake image, you call me a martyr? Ma'am, please calm down, intervened Sergeant Miller, stepping between us. I understand you are upset, but I need you to maintain your composure. Frank took my arm gently. Eleanor, breathe. You already won. Don't let her take your peace. He was right. I breathed deeply, trying to calm the trembling in my hands. Harper kept looking at me with hatred, but now there was also fear in her eyes. Real fear of what was coming. More people had stopped to watch the scene. An older lady passing by with her grocery bags approached me. It's okay, ma'am. I saw everything. That woman wanted to steal your house. You did well to report them. My niece went through something similar. You have to defend yourself. Her words gave me a strange strength. I wasn't alone. There were people who understood, who knew I wasn't the villain of this story. Lucas finally straightened up and began to walk toward the entrance of the precinct. His back was hunched, his shoulders slumped. He seemed to have aged 10 years in the last 10 minutes. Harper, let's go. The faster we finish with this, the faster we can look for a solution. There is no solution, sobbed Harper, but she began to walk behind him. There is no solution for this. We are destroyed. I watched them enter the building, escorted by the officers. Sergeant Miller stayed outside with me and Frank. Mrs. Eleanor, I need you to come in as well to give your formal statement. But you can take a moment if you need it. This has been very intense. I nodded, unable to speak. My legs were shaking so much that Frank had to hold me up. Let's sit for a moment, he told me, guiding me toward a bench near the entrance. Breathe. The worst is over. But I didn't feel like the worst was over. I felt as if something inside me had died. The illusion that my son loved me. The fantasy that my sacrifice had been worth it. The hope that family was sacred. A part of me still wanted to go in there. Hug Lucas. Tell him I forgave him. That we would find a solution together. But the other part, the part that had been betrayed so deeply, knew that would be my own destruction. Frank sat beside me. You were very brave, Eleanor. Very brave. Not many people would have the strength to do what you just did. I don't feel brave, I confessed to him, wiping my tears with a tissue he offered me. I feel destroyed. I feel like I lost my son. You had already lost him. he told me with softness but firmness. You lost him the day he decided to betray you, the day he put money above your well-being. Today you only face the truth that already existed. He was right. I knew it. But it hurt just the same. It hurt as if they had ripped my heart out of my chest. After a few minutes, Sergeant Miller came out again. Mrs. Eleanor, when you are ready, we can proceed with your statement. It won't take much time. I just need you to tell me in your own words what happened, since when you suspected and confirmed the authenticity of the evidence, Mr. Frank presented. I stood up with Frank's help. I'm ready, I said, although I didn't feel ready for anything. We entered the precinct. The interior was cold and gray. It smelled of old coffee and stale paper. They took us to a small office on the second floor. Lucas and Harper were in another office at the end of the hall. I could hear Harper's muffled screams, blaming Lucas for something. I sat in front of the sergeant's desk. Frank sat beside me. The young officer from before was there too, ready to take notes on his computer. Mrs. Eleanor, began the sergeant, tell me from the beginning, when did you start to suspect that your son and your daughter-in-law were planning something against you? I breathed deeply and began to tell. I told them about the strange comments Harper made about my apartment, about the conversation I heard that Sunday when they talked about selling it, about the supposed lawyer Kevin who came to pressure me to donate my property, about how Frank investigated and discovered Harper's massive debts. The sergeant listened, taking occasional notes. And do you have proof of all this? He asked me. Frank opened another folder. I have audio recordings, Sergeant. Mrs. Eleanor installed a recording app on her own phone when Lucas and Harper came to visit. The recordings were made on her property, so they are legal. I also have screenshots of messages between Lucas and Harper that Lucas left open on a tablet he forgot at his mother's house. And I have the financial documents obtained from public sources showing the debts. The sergeant reviewed everything meticulously. This is sufficient to proceed with charges of attempted elder abuse and fraud. However, Mrs. Eleanor, I need to ask you something important. Do you want to press formal charges against your son and your daughter-in-law? Or do you prefer this to remain as an official warning? I stayed silent. That was the question I had been avoiding since all this started. Pressing charges meant Lucas could have a criminal record. He could lose his job. It could ruin his life completely. But not pressing charges meant they would get away with it, that they would learn they could betray me without real consequences. Frank squeezed my hand. Think about it well, Eleanor. But remember that if there are no consequences, they will try again. Maybe not against you, but against someone else. He was right. If Harper had done this with me, she would do it with others. If Lucas had learned that betrayal had no price, he would follow that path. I want to press formal charges, I said with a trembling but firm voice. Against Harper Sanchez for fraud and attempted elder abuse, against Lucas Sanchez as an accomplice, and against Kevin, the fake lawyer, for impersonating a certified professional. The sergeant nodded. Understood. I am going to prepare the documents. The judicial process can take several months. You will have to testify. It is going to be emotionally difficult. I know, I replied, but it is necessary. I spent the next 2 hours giving my full statement. Every detail, every conversation, every moment of suspicion, every piece of evidence. The young officer transcribed everything on his computer. In the end, they made me read the statement and sign it. When we left the office, I saw Lucas in the hallway. He was sitting on a plastic chair with his head in his hands. Harper wasn't with him. Surely they had her in another room. Lucas looked up when he saw me. His eyes were red and swollen. Mom, he whispered. Mom, please. We can talk, just you and me. Please. Frank squeezed my arm. You don't have to talk to him if you don't want to. But a part of me needed to hear what he had to say. Needed to close that chapter. Give me a moment, I told Frank. Just a moment. Frank nodded and moved a few steps away. Far enough to give us privacy, but close enough to intervene if necessary. I approached Lucas. Up close he looked worse. He had a haggard face, unshaven beard, sunken eyes. Say something, I told him. Lucas stood up, staggering. Mom, I don't even know where to start. I know I ruined everything. I know there is no forgiveness for what I did. But I need you to know that I never wanted to hurt you. Never. But you were going to do it anyway, I told him, keeping my voice steady, even though I felt like my whole body was shaking inside. You were going to take my apartment. You were going to leave me with nothing. So tell me, Lucas, how exactly was that not hurting me? Harper convinced me that you would be okay, he said with a desperate voice. She told me you could come live with us, that we would take better care of you, that it was just a transfer on paper. I believed her, Mom. I really believed her. Lie, I told him, feeling the rage rise again. I heard your conversations. I heard you planning to sell the apartment immediately. I heard you talking about leaving me in a state nursing home because I would be a burden. Don't lie to me now. There is no reason to lie anymore. Lucas covered his face with his hands. You're right. You're right. Harper said those things, but I didn't want to believe it. I convinced myself she was exaggerating, that when the moment came, we would find another solution. But deep down, I did know. I knew what we were planning, and I still went ahead. Why? I asked him, feeling tears begin to cloud my vision. Why did you do it? I gave you everything, everything I had. I went hungry so you could eat. I worked until I destroyed my body so you could study. I loved you more than my own life, and you repaid me like this. Because I am a coward, whispered Lucas. Because Harper has a way of making you feel like you are less if you don't give her what she wants. Because I got tired of hearing her complain that we lived in a rented apartment while you had property. Because the debts were suffocating me, and I saw your apartment as the easy way out. Because I am a damn selfish person who forgot everything his mother did for him. At least now you are telling the truth, I told him, wiping my tears with the back of my hand. At least now you are being honest. Mom, what is going to happen to us? He asked with a cracking voice. The banks already started calling. Harper is destroyed. I am going to lose my job when they find out about this. We have nowhere to go. We have nothing. A part of me, that maternal part that never fully dies, wanted to tell him we would find a solution, that I would help him, as I always had, that we could overcome this together. But the other part, the part that had finally learned to value herself, stood firm. You should have worried about that before betraying me, I told him, before planning to steal from me, before choosing Harper and the money over your own mother. So this is it? Asked Lucas in a choked voice. You are going to let me fall? You are going to let me lose everything? I am not letting you fall, I told him, feeling something inside me finally harden. You let yourself fall. You made the decisions that brought you here. I simply refused to be your victim. Mom, please, he began to plead, falling to his knees in front of me. Please, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I don't deserve anything. But don't leave me like this. I can't handle this alone. The debts are too big. Harper is talking about killing herself. Everything is chaos. Is Harper talking about killing herself? Or is she manipulating you again? I asked him with more harshness than I intended. Because that woman has lied about everything since the day I met her. It wouldn't surprise me if this is also another one of her performances. I don't know, sobbed Lucas. I don't know what is real and what is a lie anymore. I don't know anything anymore. Frank approached then. Eleanor, that's enough. You don't have to go on with this now. He made his decisions, and now he has to live with the consequences. Lucas looked up at Frank. You set the trap for us. You convinced my mother to do this. I didn't have to convince anyone, responded Frank calmly. Your mother came to me because she heard your plans to rob her. I just gave her the tools to protect herself. If there is a villain in this story, Lucas, it isn't me. You guys don't understand, screamed Lucas, standing up. Harper is going to blame me for everything. She is going to say I forced her. She is going to divorce me and leave me with all the debts. I am going to lose everything, and I am going to be left alone. Welcome to how I would have felt if your plan had worked, I told him with a coldness that surprised even me. Alone, with nothing, after having given everything? The difference is that you looked for this. I didn't. Sergeant Miller appeared at that moment. Mr. Lucas Sanchez, I need you to return to the office. There are more documents you must sign. Lucas looked at me one last time. His eyes pleaded for something I could no longer give him. Mom, this can't be the end. It can't be like this. But I said nothing. I just turned around and began walking toward the exit with Frank by my side. Eleanor! Screamed Lucas behind me. Eleanor, Please! I am your son! I am your only son! I stopped. Without turning around, I said, You were my son. The son I raised would have preferred to die before betraying me. The man I see now is a stranger. And I kept walking. Each step hurt, as if I were walking on broken glass. But I didn't stop. I didn't look back. When we left the precinct, the sun was high in the sky. It was barely noon, although it felt like years had passed. Frank took me to his car. Let's go home. Eleanor, you have had enough for today. The way back was silent. I looked out the window without really seeing anything. My mind replayed over and over the images of Lucas on his knees, crying, pleading, and every time it hurt just the same. When we arrived at the building, Frank accompanied me to my apartment. I'll make you some tea, he told me gently. You need to calm down a little. I nodded weakly. I sat on my old sofa while Frank moved around my kitchen as if he knew it by heart. And I suppose he did, after so many shared coffees, so many conversations. He brought me tea with chamomile and honey. Drink slowly. And breathe. The worst is over. But I didn't feel like the worst was over. I felt like it was just beginning. Now would come the trials, the testimonies, seeing Lucas again and again, hearing the details of his betrayal repeated in a court of law. Frank sat beside me. I know what you are thinking. You are thinking that maybe you were too hard, that maybe you should forgive him, that maybe there is still time to fix it. How do you know what I am thinking? I asked him. Because I know that look, he told me. It's the same look my sister had when she reported her husband for domestic violence. That mix of relief and guilt, of freedom and loss, of having done the right thing but feeling terrible about it. Did your sister regret reporting him? I asked. For a while, nodded Frank. The first few months were horrible. He called her crying, pleading, promising to change. His family pressured her to drop the charges. She almost gave in several times. But in the end, she stood firm. And do you know what happened? What happened? I asked, although I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. He got married again 2 years later, Frank told me. And 6 months later, his new wife also reported him for violence. Because people like that don't change, Eleanor. They don't learn. If my sister had dropped the charges, he would have kept beating her. And eventually, he would have killed her. Are you saying that if I forgive Lucas, he is going to try to rob me again? I asked. I am saying that if there are no consequences, people don't learn, responded Frank. Lucas needs to hit rock bottom. He needs to understand that his actions have a price, and Harper needs to be stopped before she ruins someone else. It makes sense in theory, I told him. But in practice, he is still my son, the baby I carried, the boy I raised. I can't simply turn off those feelings. And no one is asking you to do that, Frank told me, taking my hand. You can love him and still protect yourself from him. You can miss what could have been and still accept what is. You can cry for the loss and still move forward. All of that can coexist. His words gave me a strange comfort. I realized I had been thinking in absolute terms. Either I loved him or I hated him. Either I forgave him or I punished him. But life wasn't that simple. Thank you, Frank, I told him, squeezing his hand. I don't know what I would do without you in all this. You are stronger than you think, Eleanor, he responded with a soft smile. You always have been. You just needed to remember it. I spent the rest of that day in a kind of fog. Frank stayed with me until the afternoon, ensuring I ate something, that I wasn't left alone with my thoughts for too long. When he finally went to his apartment, I sat on my balcony watching the city. My phone had been ringing all afternoon. Unknown numbers that I didn't answer. Surely they were reporters. Somehow the news had already started to leak. An elderly woman who reported her own son for trying to steal her apartment. It was the kind of story people loved to share. At nightfall, I received a message from a number I did recognize. It was Margaret, my first cousin who lived in another state. We just found out what happened with Lucas. We are in shock. How are you? Do you need anything? Margaret and I had been close as girls, but life had drifted us apart. She had married and moved away almost 40 years ago. We spoke maybe twice a year, at Christmas and birthdays. I replied, I'm okay, cousin. It was hard, but necessary. Thank you for worrying. Her response arrived immediately. "Everyone in the family is talking about this. Some are on your side. Others say you were too harsh. I just want you to know that I support you. You did the right thing." Her words comforted me more than I expected. At least someone in my family understood. The next few days were a different nightmare. The banks began to contact Lucas formally to collect the debts. According to Frank, who continued monitoring the situation through his contacts, Lucas had to hire a defense attorney with money he didn't have. Harper had hired her own lawyer and, just as Lucas had predicted, was trying to pin all the blame on him. A week after the incident at the precinct, I received a court summons. The case would proceed to trial in 2 months. I would have to testify, see Lucas on the stand, confront everything again, but this time in front of judges, lawyers, and possibly media. That night I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake thinking about everything, about how we had reached this point, about whether there was any way to have avoided it, about whether I had failed as a mother. At 3 a.m, I heard a soft knock on my door. I put on my robe and went to see. Through the peephole, there was a young woman I didn't recognize. "Who is it?" I asked without opening. "Mrs. Eleanor. My name is Olivia. I am a reporter for the newspaper, The Truth. I would like to speak with you about your case. I believe your story needs to be told." "I have nothing to say," I responded. "Please leave." "Ma'am, I know it must be difficult," she insisted. "But there are many older people going through similar situations. Your courage in reporting it could help others. Please, just 5 minutes. Leave or I will call the police," I told her firmly. I heard her footsteps walking away. I stood there, heart beating fast. So now I would also have to deal with reporters harassing me. Perfect. The next day, Frank knocked on my door early. He came with the newspaper in his hand. His expression was serious. "Eleanor, you need to see this." He handed me the newspaper. On the front page was a photo of me leaving the precinct, taken the day of the incident. The headline read, "Senior denounces son for attempted dispossession. 2-year-old grandmother exposes family robbery scheme." I felt my knees shaking. I opened the newspaper to the page where the story continued. They had interviewed neighbors, Sergeant Miller. They had even gotten an old photo of me with Lucas when he was a child. The story was told quite accurately, portraying me as the victim and Lucas and Harper as the villains. "This is terrible," I whispered. "Now everyone knows." "It isn't terrible," corrected Frank. "It is necessary. People need to know these things happen. That children sometimes betray their parents. That you have to protect yourself even from family. But now Lucas is going to be publicly humiliated," I told him. "His employer is going to see this, his friends, everyone. And those are the consequences of his actions," responded Frank firmly. "Eleanor, you need to stop protecting him. He didn't protect you. He planned to destroy you. You can't keep feeling pity for him." He was right, but it hurt just the same. That afternoon I received a call from Sergeant Miller. "Mrs. Eleanor, I need to inform you about some developments in the case. Harper Sanchez has given a full statement blaming Lucas for everything. She says she didn't know the magnitude of her own debts, that Lucas managed the finances, and that he was the one who planned the whole scheme to rob you of your apartment." "That is a lie," I said immediately. I heard the conversations. It was Harper who pressured him. She was the one who had the debts. "I know," responded the sergeant, "and we have the evidence that proves it. But she has hired a good lawyer who is trying to build a case where she appears as a victim manipulated by her husband. It is a common strategy in these cases." "And is it going to work?" I asked with a tight stomach. "Not with the evidence we have," he assured me, "but I wanted you to be prepared. In the trial, Harper's lawyer is probably going to try to paint you as a vindictive mother-in-law who misinterpreted innocent conversations. They are going to attack your credibility. I am prepared for that," I told him, although I wasn't sure I really was. "I also need to inform you that Lucas has requested to speak with you. He has asked for family mediation before the trial. It is his right as a defendant to request this. You are not obligated to accept, but I wanted you to know." "I don't want mediation," I responded immediately. "There is nothing to mediate." "Understood," said the sergeant. "I am going to notify his defense attorney that you rejected mediation." When I hung up, I sat on my sofa feeling the weight of everything. Lucas wanted to talk to me. Part of me wondered what he would want to say, if he had really repented or if it was another manipulation. That night I dreamed of Lucas as a child. He must have been about 5 in the dream. He was crying because he had fallen and scraped his knees. I carried him, comforted him, cleaned his wounds. He looked at me with those big eyes full of absolute trust and said to me, "Mom, you always take care of me. I am always going to take care of you too." I woke up crying. It was 4 in the morning, and I knew I wouldn't sleep again. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. The media continued covering the story. Some painted me as a heroine. Others insinuated that I was a cruel mother who wouldn't forgive a mistake. I received letters of support from other older people who had gone through similar situations. I also received hateful letters from people telling me I was a bad mother. Frank was my anchor during all that time. He accompanied me to appointments with the prosecutor. He helped me review documents. He made sure I ate and slept. Without him, I think I would have collapsed. 1 month after the incident, I received an unexpected visit. It was Harper's mother, a woman named Linda, about 60 years old. Frank was with me when she knocked on the door. "Mrs. Eleanor," she began when I opened. "I know I have no right to be here. I know my daughter did terrible things. But I need to talk to you." I let her in, more out of curiosity than anything else. We sat in the living room. Linda looked tired, ashamed. She twisted a handkerchief in her hands. "I don't know how to start," she said with a trembling voice. "Harper is my daughter, and I love her. But I also know she is sick. She is addicted to shopping, to appearance, to validation. I have tried to help her for years, but she always relapses. And now she destroyed her life and her husband's life. And she almost destroyed yours." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked her. "Because I need you to know that not everyone in her family supports what she did," Linda responded. "Her husband, Harper's father, thinks you exaggerated. But I don't. I believe you did the right thing. Harper needs to hit rock bottom. It is the only way she will seek real help." Her words surprised me. "I appreciate you telling me," I responded. "But it doesn't change anything. The charges are going forward." "I know," nodded Linda. "And I'm not asking you to drop them. I just wanted you to know that I understand. And that I'm sorry. I'm sorry my daughter caused all this pain." After she left, Frank told me, "That woman has been carrying the guilt for how her daughter turned out for years. I don't envy her." "Neither do I responded. And I realized that maybe in 20 years, I would be in her place, visiting the victims. The day of the trial arrived faster than I expected. I woke up with a knot in my stomach that wouldn't go away, not with tea, nor with Frank's comforting words. I put on my best dress, a beige one I had bought years ago for Lucas's wedding, and that I would now use to testify against him. The irony did not escape me. Frank accompanied me to the courthouse. We arrived early, but there were already reporters waiting outside. They took photos of me that I tried to avoid by covering my face with my purse. We managed to enter through a side entrance thanks to an officer Frank knew. The prosecutor handling my case was a man of about 45 named Francis. We met in a small room before the hearing began. "Mrs. Eleanor, remember that all you have to do is tell the truth. I am going to guide you with the questions. The defense attorneys are going to try to confuse you or make you angry. Maintain your calm, be direct, don't elaborate more than necessary." "I understand," I told him, although my voice shook. "They are going to try to paint you as a resentful mother-in-law," Francis continued. "They will suggest you misunderstood conversations, that you exaggerated, that this is revenge for some family disagreement. Don't let yourself be provoked. We have the recordings, we have the documents, we have solid evidence. We just need you to confirm the facts." I nodded, trying to calm my nerves. Frank squeezed my shoulder. "You're going to be okay," he whispered to me. "Just tell the truth." We entered the courtroom. It was bigger than I imagined. There were rows of seats for the public that were almost full. I recognized some neighbors, Margaret, who had traveled from another state to support me, Linda, Harper's mother, sitting in the corner with a destroyed expression. And then I saw them. Lucas and Harper sitting at the defendant's table with their respective lawyers. Lucas wore a dark suit I hadn't seen before. He looked haggard, thinner, with deep dark circles under his eyes. Harper was impeccable as always, with a discreet gray dress and her hair pulled back. Probably advice from her lawyer to look less frivolous. When Lucas saw me, his eyes filled with tears. He tried to stand up, but his lawyer stopped him. "Mom," I managed to hear him whisper. I looked away. I couldn't see him like that. Not now. The judge entered, a man of about 60 with a severe expression. We all stood up. The hearing began with legal formalities I barely processed. My heart beat so hard I felt the whole courtroom could hear it. Prosecutor Francis called Sergeant Miller to testify first. He explained how he had received the case, the evidence presented, the procedure followed. He was clear, professional, convincing. Then they called me. I stood up on trembling legs. Frank gave me a handshake before letting go. I walked toward the stand, feeling all eyes on me. I swore to tell the truth with my hand on a Bible they passed me. Prosecutor Francis approached. "Mrs. Eleanor, tell the court how this situation began. When did you start to suspect your son and daughter-in-law were planning something against you?" I breathed deep and began to tell. I explained about Harper's strange comments about my apartment, about the conversation I heard where they discussed selling my property, about the fake lawyer Kevin who pressured me to donate my apartment. The prosecutor showed me documents that I confirmed, recordings that I recognized, text messages that I identified. My testimony lasted almost 2 hours. I told everything with the greatest possible precision, trying to keep emotion out of my voice even though it was almost impossible. When the prosecutor finished, Harper's lawyer stood up. She was a woman of about 50 with a hard expression. "Mrs. Eleanor, your relationship with your daughter-in-law was always conflicting, right?" "No," I responded. "At first I thought we were close, but you never approved of the marriage," she insisted. "You never thought Harper was good enough for your son." "That isn't true," I responded, feeling attacked. I welcomed her with open arms. "However, you have admitted that it always seemed to you that Harper was interested in money," the lawyer continued, "that she looked at your things evaluating their worth. Isn't it true that you already had prejudices against her?" "I was right in my suspicions," I responded firmly. "The evidence proves it." "Or the evidence proves that you interpreted private conversations maliciously," replied the lawyer. "My client and her husband were genuinely worried about your safety. A 72-year-old woman living alone in an apartment with steep stairs. Is it so far-fetched that they wanted to protect her?" "Protect me by selling my apartment without my knowledge?" I asked, feeling the rage begin to boil. "Protect me by leaving me in a state nursing home while they enjoyed the money? That isn't protection. That is theft." "Objection," shouted the lawyer. "The witness is speculating." "Overruled," responded the judge. "The witness has the right to express her interpretation of the facts." The lawyer asked me more questions, trying to make me contradict myself or get confused. But I stood firm. I had lived all that. I knew the truth. When she finished with her questions, Lucas's lawyer stood up. He was a young, nervous man. "Mrs. Eleanor, my client wants you to know that he deeply regrets it, that he never wanted to hurt you, that he was manipulated by his wife and the circumstances." "The circumstances didn't force him to plan to rob me," I responded. "He made his own decisions." "Lucas is willing to compensate you," continued the lawyer, "to pay you every dollar he can, to work the rest of his life to amend his error. He only asks for a chance." "A chance for what?" I asked, feeling tears begin to form. "To betray me again? To find another way to take the little I have? No, thank you." The lawyer tried to ask more questions, but I was already too emotional. The judge intervened. "I believe the witness has been sufficiently questioned. You may step down." I stepped down from the stand with shaking legs. Frank received me in my seat. "You did very well," he whispered to me. "Very well." Then they called Lucas to testify. Seeing my son take the stand, swear to tell the truth, sit there exposed in front of everyone, was one of the most painful things I have ever experienced. And I have experienced many painful things. Prosecutor Francis was ruthless with him. He showed him the recordings where he planned to sell my apartment, the messages where he coordinated with Kevin, the documents of Harper's debts that he had co-signed without telling me anything. Lucas tried to explain himself, but every explanation sounded weaker than the last. "Yes," he finally admitted with a broken voice. "Yes, we planned to keep the apartment. Yes, we were going to sell it. But I really believed that later we would find a way to take care of my mother. I wasn't going to leave her on the street. So where were you going to leave her? Asked the prosecutor. When it was Harper's turn to testify, she cried. She acted the perfect victim. She said she didn't know the magnitude of her debts, that Lucas managed everything, that she just wanted to help her mother-in-law. But the prosecutor had the account statements with her signature, the extravagant purchases with dates and locations. Everything showed she knew exactly what she was doing. Her lawyer tried to argue that Harper suffered from shopping addiction, a disease, and needed treatment, not punishment. But the prosecutor counter-argued that this did not justify planning to strip an elderly woman of her assets. The trial lasted 3 full days. We heard testimonies from neighbors who confirmed seeing Lucas and Harper acting suspiciously, from the forensic accountant who analyzed Harper's finances and confirmed the debts were massive and she had hidden them deliberately, from Frank, who explained how he had investigated and discovered the plan. Kevin, the fake lawyer, was also tried. It turned out he had a record for fraud. He had been scamming older people for years using the same scheme. The prosecutor asked for the maximum penalty for him. On the 3rd day, the moment for closing arguments arrived. Prosecutor Francis stood up and looked at the judge. "Your Honor, this is not a case of a family misunderstanding. It is not a case of good intentions poorly executed. This is a clear case of elder financial abuse, fraud, and exploitation of a vulnerable person. The defendants systematically planned to strip Mrs. Eleanor of her only property, the fruit of decades of work and sacrifice. They used their family relationship to gain her trust and then betray her in the vilest way. Lucas Sanchez is not only an accomplice, he is an instigator. He signed as a co-signer on debts he knew he couldn't pay. He coordinated with a known criminal to deceive his own mother, and he only shows remorse now that he was discovered. Harper Sanchez is a financial predator who uses her appearance and charm to manipulate and destroy. She deserves the full weight of the law. And Kevin Mendez is a habitual criminal who must be removed from society to protect other vulnerable seniors. Harper's lawyer argued that her client was a victim of an untreated mental illness, that she deserved rehabilitation, not prison, that Mrs. Eleanor had exaggerated everything out of resentment. Lucas's lawyer pleaded for leniency. He argued that Lucas had been a good son for years, that he had helped his mother, that he had been manipulated by Harper and the circumstances, that he deserved a second chance. The judge listened to everything in silence. Then he announced he would give his verdict in a week. He needed time to review all the evidence and deliberate. That week was agonizing. I couldn't sleep. I barely ate. Frank stayed with me most of the time, making sure I didn't crumble. "And if the judge believes them?" I asked him one night. "And if he decides I exaggerated, that I was a cruel mother?" "It's not going to happen," Frank assured me. "The evidence is irrefutable, but even if it happened, you did the right thing. That is what matters." Finally, the day of the verdict arrived. We returned to the courthouse. The room was even fuller than before. Everyone wanted to see how this story ended. The judge entered, and we all stood up. He sat down and began to read his decision. After exhaustively reviewing all the evidence presented, witness testimonies, and arguments from both sides, I have reached the following conclusions. My heart beat so hard I felt I was going to faint. In the case of Kevin Mendez, I find him guilty of all charges: fraud, professional impersonation, and conspiracy to commit larceny. Taking into account his criminal record and the repetitive pattern of his crimes, I sentence him to 8 years in prison without possibility of parole before serving 6 years. Kevin lowered his head. He showed no emotion. In the case of Harper Sanchez, continued the judge, I find her guilty of elder financial abuse, financial fraud, and conspiracy. While I recognize she may have problems with shopping addiction, that neither justifies nor excuses planning to strip an older person of their assets. I sentence her to 5 years in prison, with possibility of reduction if she completes an addiction rehabilitation program and demonstrates genuine remorse. Harper began to cry hysterically. "No, no, no," she screamed. "This can't be happening. I have a life. I have plans. You can't take 5 years from me." Her lawyer tried to calm her, but Harper was out of control. 2 officers had to approach to contain her. "This is your fault," she screamed at Lucas. "This is all your fault. If you had gotten me that damn apartment, none of this would have happened." Her words fell like bombs in the room. Even her own lawyer turned pale. Harper had just admitted in front of everyone that the plan had been hers from the beginning. The judge banged his gavel, calling for order. "Mrs. Sanchez, control yourself or I will add charges for contempt of court." Harper finally fell silent, sobbing with her face in her hands. Linda, her mother, cried silently from her seat. She looked at me for a second, and I saw in her eyes an apology she could never express with words. The judge continued. "In the case of Lucas Sanchez, the situation is more complex. It is clear he participated actively in the plan to strip his mother. He signed documents, coordinated with Mr. Mendez, pressured his mother to donate her property. However, it is also clear he was manipulated to a certain extent by his wife and desperate financial circumstances. Taking into account he has no criminal record, that for years he was a responsible son, and that he has shown genuine remorse, I find him guilty, but with a suspended sentence. 3 years in prison, suspended, with 5 years probation. He must complete 500 hours of community service working with senior citizens, attend mandatory psychological therapy, and may not approach Mrs. Eleanor without her explicit written consent. If he violates any of these conditions, he will serve the full sentence in prison." Lucas collapsed, crying. "Thank you, Your Honor," he sobbed. "Thank you. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." "Additionally," continued the judge, "Mr. Sanchez must pay restitution to his mother for emotional damages and legal expenses. The amount will be determined in a later hearing. And I want to make something very clear." The judge looked directly at me. "Mrs. Eleanor, you showed extraordinary courage in reporting your own son. I know it wasn't easy. I know you probably questioned yourself 1,000 times if you were doing the right thing. But you did. And in doing so, you not only protected yourself, but possibly protected other potential victims of these criminals, especially from Mr. Mendez, who has been operating for years. You are an example of dignity and bravery. You have my deepest respect." Tears began to roll down my cheeks. I didn't know what to say. "Court is adjourned," announced the judge, banging his gavel for the last time. Everyone began to move at the same time. Harper was escorted out in handcuffs, still screaming and crying. Kevin walked with 2 officers, indifferent as always. Lucas tried to approach me, but an officer reminded him he couldn't. "Mom!" he shouted from the distance. "Mom, I'm sorry! I'm so sorry, please! Someday forgive me, please!" Frank took my arm. "Let's go. Eleanor, it's over. Let's go home." We left through the side door, avoiding the reporters, but I managed to hear their shouted questions. "Mrs. Eleanor, how do you feel? Are you going to forgive your son someday? What would you tell other people in similar situations?" I didn't answer anything. I just wanted to go home. In the car, on the way back, Frank finally spoke. "You did it. Eleanor, you won." But it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a loss, like the end of something I could never recover. The next few months were strange. The news of the sentence was covered extensively in the media. I received hundreds of letters from older people who had gone through similar situations, thanking me for speaking up. Some of those letters made me cry because I recognized my own pain in their words. Lucas complied with his suspended sentence. He lost his job when his employer found out about the case. He had to move to a smaller apartment. He started working in whatever he could get, menial jobs that paid little. I found out all this from Frank, who continued discreetly monitoring the situation. Harper served her sentence in prison. As far as I knew, her family cut contact with her completely. She divorced Lucas from jail, blaming him for everything until the end. I began therapy with a psychologist specializing in family trauma. It was painful, but necessary. I processed my rage, my sadness, my guilt. I learned that I could love my son and still protect myself from him. That forgiveness did not mean forgetting or allowing them to hurt me again. A year after the trial, Lucas wrote me a letter. I received it on a Tuesday morning. I held it in my hands for hours before daring to open it. "Dear Mom," it began, "I know I have no right to ask you for anything. I know I destroyed the trust you built over your entire life. I know I failed you in the worst way possible. I have spent this year in therapy, working on myself, trying to understand how I became someone capable of betraying the person who loved me most. I have no excuses. I only have deep remorse and a desperate desire to someday, if someday is possible, look you in the eyes again, without feeling like I'm dying of shame. I am working with older people as part of my community service. Every day I see seniors who remind me of you, who sacrificed everything for their children, who deserved respect and love, not betrayal. And every day I hate myself a little more for what I did to you. I don't ask for forgiveness because I don't deserve it. I just want you to know that I am trying to be better, that I am paying my debt, that I think of you every day. Your son who doesn't deserve to call himself that. Lucas. I cried reading that letter. I read it 20 times. I showed it to Frank, to my therapist, to Margaret. Everyone told me the same thing. Only you can decide what to do with this. 6 more months passed before I dared to respond. I wrote him a short letter. Lucas, I received your letter. I appreciate your words, but words are not enough. The years will tell if your repentance is real or just fear of consequences. For now, I need distance. I need to heal. Maybe someday we can talk, but not today, not tomorrow, maybe never. And you have to be at peace with that. Eleanor. 2 years after the trial, on my 74th birthday, Frank organized a small celebration in my apartment. He invited Margaret, some neighbors who had become friends, my therapist who was already more than that. We were eating cake when there was a knock on the door. Frank went to open it. He returned with a serious expression. Eleanor, there is someone here who wants to see you. He says he understands if you don't want to, but he wanted to try. My heart stopped. I knew who it was without asking. You don't have to see him, Frank told me. I can ask him to leave. But something inside me, maybe curiosity, maybe that maternal part that would never die completely, made me say, let him in, just for 5 minutes. Lucas entered my apartment for the first time in 2 years. He looked different, thinner, with more gray hair, deep lines around his eyes. He carried cheap flowers from the market and an expression of absolute nervousness. Hi, Mom, he said with a trembling voice. Happy birthday. Thank you, I responded, without moving from my spot on the sofa. I know I shouldn't have come without warning, he continued. But today you turned 74, and I couldn't bear not at least trying to wish you happiness. I have completed my community service. I have been in therapy all this time. I got a stable job, modest but honest. I am paying my debts little by little. I am trying to be the man you deserved me to be. I'm glad to hear it, I told him with a neutral voice. Mom, can I sit? Just a moment. I promise I will leave if you ask me to. I looked at Frank. He nodded slightly. Okay, I told Lucas. 5 minutes. Lucas sat on the edge of a chair, as if he feared taking up too much space. Mom, there is no day I don't think about what I did to you. There is no night I can sleep without dreaming of that moment in front of the precinct. I have lost everything. My marriage, my career, my reputation, my friends, but what hurts me most is having lost you. Because you were the only real thing in my life, the only pure thing. And I destroyed it out of greed and cowardice. The words sounded sincere, but I had learned to be cautious. What do you want from me, Lucas? I asked him directly. Nothing, he responded. I don't want your apartment. I don't want your money. I don't want you to forgive me, because I know I don't deserve it. I just want you to know that I am trying to be better, and that if someday, in many years, you decide to give me the chance to show you I changed, I will be here waiting. But if you decide you never want to see me again, I will respect that too. He stood up, leaving the flowers on the table. Happy birthday. Mom, I love you. I have always loved you and always will. And I deeply regret not knowing how to show it when it mattered. And he left. Just like that. Without dramatic pleas, without trying to manipulate. He just left. Frank approached me. Are you okay? He asked me. I don't know, I responded honestly. I don't know what to feel. That night, after everyone left, I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea watching the stars. I thought about the whole journey, about the 9-year-old girl who lost her mother, about the young woman forced to marry, about the mother who sacrificed everything, about the old woman who finally learned to defend herself. I thought about Lucas and whether someday I could trust him again. whether forgiveness was possible after so much betrayal, whether a mother-son relationship could be rebuilt after breaking so completely. I had no answers. Maybe I never would. But what I did know was this: I had survived. I had faced my greatest fear, the betrayal of my own son, and it hadn't destroyed me. I was still here. I was still standing. I was still the owner of my apartment, of my dignity, of my life. Frank came out to the balcony with another cup of tea for himself. "Are you staying out here all night?" he asked me with a smile. "Maybe," I responded, returning the smile. "It's a beautiful night." He sat beside me. "It is," he agreed. "And did you have a good day, despite the unexpected visit?" "Yes," I admitted. "It has been a good day." We stayed there, sitting in comfortable silence, watching the night pass, and I realized I had found something I never knew I needed. Peace. Not the perfect peace of fairy tale happy endings, but the imperfect peace of knowing I did the right thing, of knowing I defended myself, of knowing I have worth. 3 years later, on my 77th birthday, Lucas visited me again, and this time I let him stay 10 minutes. 6 months later, 20 minutes. A year later, an hour. Trust is rebuilt slowly, or maybe it never rebuilds completely. Only something new and different is created, something more cautious, but also more honest. Lucas never recovered what he lost: his career, his marriage, his years. But he gained something else: humility, empathy, awareness of his actions. He worked helping older people genuinely now, not out of obligation, but out of conviction. And I learned the hardest lesson of all: that true love never asks you to destroy yourself to save it. That sometimes the family we choose is more loyal than the one we carry in our blood. That you have the right to protect yourself even from those you love. And that forgiveness, if it comes, must come from a place of strength, not weakness. My apartment is still mine. My life is still mine. And although the scars never disappeared completely, I learned to wear them with dignity, because in the end, I survived. And that, in itself, is enough of a victory.